Everyone, we're so happy to have you here today. My name is Amy Magasos, and I serve as Associate Director of Strategy and Partnerships with a focus on post-secondary basic needs at the Washington Student Achievement Council. WASAC is so excited to host today's webinar on advancing post-secondary success for parenting students in Washington. And I'd also like to recognize the support and ongoing collaboration of core planning partners, Communities for Our Colleges, Washington Campus Children's Centers Coalition, and the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges, and many more, but that's our core team. So welcome everyone, and so thrilled that you are all here today. Today's webinar will provide an overview that we hope will inform and energize you to learn more and get engaged in supporting parenting student success in Washington. So today, first we'll hear from my WASAC research colleague, Arya Kukreja, about the landscape of Washington parents who are also students and some of the challenges they face and some strategies to better support their success. Next, we'll hear from a powerful panel with perspectives, campus practices, and policies, including student parents' experiences, examples from Pierce College and the Evergreen State College, national research and practice examples, and a new bill in this legislative session. And finally, we'll wrap up the hour sharing an exciting innovation, invitation to get engaged from all of you, joining a virtual learning series on advancing parenting student success. This will be a 3-webinar series this spring where you can take a deeper dive into the topics discussed in today's overview,
What'd you
learn
say?
about research and policies
No.
and practices across the country and in Washington, and consider opportunities that Washington can take to advance support for parenting student success. So before we go on, some quick housekeeping notes. Today's webinar will be recorded, posted, and emailed to our over 200 registrants. Since we only have an hour, thank you all for remaining on mute and sharing your comments and questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout. And we'll reserve some time after the presentation by Arya and after the panel to discuss your questions, and we'll also respond in the chat. And of course, if we run out of time, we'll be happy to follow up after the webinar with any remaining questions. And finally, today's slides are available. I'm going to put them in the chat. I'll also put information on the virtual learning series in the chat, but know that we're going to take some more time later in our webinar to dive into that with a little more depth. So give me a moment and I will put these in the chat for all of us. There we go. And let's move on. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about our recent strategy efforts. So before I hand it to our WASAC research colleagues to present on the landscape, here's a little bit more about recent efforts to advance parenting student success. So as you may know, the WASAC Council represents all sectors of education in Washington. We're really centered on advancing equitable post-secondary attainment through strategic efforts in affordability, enrollment, basic needs, and post-secondary completion. So better understanding and supporting the needs and goals of students who are also parenting is part of the state goal of advancing equitable post-secondary attainment. And over recent years, WASAC, together with community-based orgs, campuses, student leaders and advocates, workforce and labor partners in higher education, and social service agencies have all begun discussions of how to better understand the landscape of what we know about Washington parenting students, to learn from campus practices and policies, as well as community partnerships that support parents engaging with post-secondary, and also to identify the issues and the strategic opportunities for Washington and for campuses and communities as they work to support parenting students. WASAC prepared a landscape brief this past fall as a foundation of what's known and some strategic opportunities, which you'll hear about today. And last October, a team of collaborators, Communities for Our Colleges, State Board for Community and Technical Colleges, and the Washington Campus Children's Center Coalition worked together to host a strategy session at Pierce College with diverse collaborators from across the state that allowed us to work together to identify some key priorities and opportunities for Washington. This led to policy development by advocates that you're going to hear about today. So where are we now? This is truly a time for deeper learning and engagement across many more partners in Washington and campuses and communities, and building toward informed recommendations for our state. So we are eager to work with you on that. And with that, I would love to be able to pass it on to my colleague, Arya Kukreja, who will share more about the landscape of post-secondary parenting students. Passing it to you, Arya.
Thanks, Amy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Aria, and I'm a research analyst on the research team at WASAC. And I'm here with my colleague Casey Dean today. So, as Amy noted, last fall, Casey and I published a brief on designing post-secondary education for parenting students, or students with dependents. And so today we're going to talk about what we know about their experiences and some strategies to support them. And I just want to thank Amy again for inviting us to talk with you today. So I want to start off with some background on what we do at WASAC. At the heart of our agency's mission, we work to create opportunities that benefit all Washingtonians. Education, and particularly for us, post-secondary education, is one of the levers we can pull to increase economic opportunity, stable careers, and upward mobility. Today, we're going to focus on parenting students or students with at least one child or dependent. Nationally, parenting students have been found to begin their post-secondary education resilient and motivated to learn, but when they arrive at a post-secondary institution, they can often find educational structures that end up working against them. An example of this could be class schedules conflicting with childcare operating hours, or time spent in class or studying as being time parents cannot spend focused on their children and families. This tension between their motivation and the structural challenges that they might find at their institution ends up putting parenting students in a pretty challenging position where they can often outperform their peers in academic coursework, but according to estimates from the Urban Institute, they can graduate at lower rates. So now we'll look at the proportion of parenting students in Washington State, which we found using WASAC's 2024 Basic Needs Survey, and we'll break this down by some different demographics. This survey showed that the percent of parenting students in Washington is on par with the percent of parenting students nationally, where about 18% of students are parenting students. But keep in mind that this is a sample from a survey, so it might not reflect all students across the state. So as a share of survey respondents, parenting students are disproportionately low income, female, and students of color. So 75% of parenting students identify as female, compared to 63% of non-parenting students statewide. And parenting students are also disproportionately Black, Hispanic or Latino, or students of two or more races. And perhaps most significantly, if we look to the chart on the right, 62% of parenting students are low income, and that's compared to about 40% of non-parenting students statewide. Looking across different regions in Washington also provides an idea of what supports parenting students might need across the state. 68% of parenting students report challenges accessing basic needs, and that's compared to 52% of all non-parenting students statewide. And by basic needs, we mean difficulty accessing things such as affordable housing or food, healthcare, or childcare. And then there's also some important variation regionally. If we look to the map on the right, the highest percent of parenting students who cannot pay for childcare without worrying about basic needs and security are located in the South Puget Sound region, and that's about 84%. Now we get to the big barrier for students with children. Washington parenting students report that there are very high costs of childcare. 3 in 4 parenting students needing childcare across the state reported these unaffordable costs. And based on data from the Economic Policy Institute, which is that figure on the right, the cost of childcare and 4-year-old care both surpass that of college in Washington. And infant care itself is on par with housing costs across the state. Availability of childcare is also a significant challenge. About 43% of parenting students in the survey reported long wait lists or a lack of spots in childcare. And so even if parenting students may have access to childcare, these hours may not meet their needs. In the basic needs survey, nearly 50% of students in Washington indicated that childcare provider hours and their own student schedules ended up being at odds with each other. Additional challenges in the industry as a whole also contribute to obstacles for parenting students specifically, such as stringent staffing needs, competitive pressure to keep costs low for families, and things like high staff turnover. So now let's turn to the existing Washington supports for parenting students. On-campus childcare centers. Some post-secondary campuses have addressed parenting students' need for childcare by offering on-campus learning and care. All 6 public universities have this, and as of about last spring, we understood that about 21 of 34 community and technical colleges have this available, but this is not published publicly. State subsidies directly to parenting students, for example, the Working Connections Child Care Program or WCCC program, provides income-eligible parenting students a subsidy for childcare expenses. There's one caveat to this support, though, which is that eligibility depends on enrollment status. Students enrolled part-time also need to be working at least 20 hours per week, but this is not part of the criteria for full-time students. Another existing support is colleges and universities receiving pass-through grants from state or federally funded programs. And then these can then be used to fund childcare subsidies or on-campus childcare centers. These would be programs like WASAC's state-funded childcare grants program and the federally funded Childcare Access Means Parents in School or C-Campus program. All of Washington's public colleges and universities also now provide support for students' basic needs. And some have begun to prioritize the distinct needs of parenting students. For example, Washington State University's Women's Club and Walla Walla Community College both maintain a list of resources for parenting students. WSU also uses a basic needs navigator that their students can use to refer themselves or other students who they know to meet with a navigator for support. Everett Community College's Belonging Center is also designed to support adult learners and parenting students, and they've developed some child-friendly study areas that have things like children's toys, books, electronic charging stations, and fidget tools for students. Some Washington colleges and universities also provide subsidies directly to parenting students, and these can be used towards childcare at a licensed facility. Examples of this in Washington are the ACE grant through the Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace and Eastern Washington University's Child Care Grant. All of these interventions do have their benefits, but many students still struggle to find and access and be eligible for these services, not to mention maintaining them. Given these challenges, we've found 5 strategies to support parenting students, and we'll go through just a few of them today. Strategy 1 is collecting data that suits parenting students and their needs. By formalizing administrative data collection protocols to better identify parenting students and their needs, colleges, universities, and policymakers alike can all adapt relevant policies and practices accordingly. In Washington, aside from high-level findings in the survey that we've been using for this brief and historical data collected by SBCTC, very little information is collected on or about parenting students. Data on parenting students is rather limited across the nation, but there are some states that have started collecting data on this student group, and that includes Oregon, Illinois, and California. Oregon and Illinois have both passed Senate bills requiring that colleges and universities collect data on parenting students, and Oregon reports these data publicly. California has also started doing similar work. Since these states have begun working on parenting student data, there are now guides for how we could collect these data effectively. For strategy 2, we recommend reducing administrative burdens. We can do this by designing clear educational processes and support systems and centering parenting students' experiences when developing higher education policy. Doing all of these together can help ensure that parenting students can navigate complexity. In 2023, a California study of parenting students found that eligible learners encountered time-consuming paperwork, limited caseworker support, and rigid submission timelines. The most straightforward solution is to simplify the processes and access to support so that parenting students' time constraints are not a barrier to accessing childcare. This may involve changing core processes like registration. Doing so would ensure that parenting students have an opportunity to prioritize classes and class times that can work within the time constraints of their family life. A few years ago, California passed an assembly bill requiring colleges and universities to do this. In a similar way, Austin Community College in Texas and the United Way for Greater Austin's Parenting Students Project encouraged students participating in the project to attend monthly meetings with other parenting students, and they received support from a student advocate, along with a $500 monthly stipend. Early evidence indicates that these initiatives had measurable positive impact on student retention and completion. Centering parenting students' experiences when designing higher education policy and practice can lead to better and more accessible higher education systems for all learners, whether or not they have dependents. Several organizations in Michigan have also partnered to inform the University of Michigan's parenting student supports. Together, they encourage the university to develop parenting student study rooms and adopt a syllabus and Title IX statement that support parenting students. In this instance, parenting students' voices end up being an opportunity for colleges and universities to identify how practices can be improved. Lastly, and perhaps most simply, the next strategy is to expand state-funded direct subsidies for parenting students. Parenting students in Washington end up paying more on average than parenting students across the nation. Oregon and Minnesota both have grants available for parenting students, and as evidenced by early data from Austin Community College's Parenting Students Project that was mentioned in Strategy 2 a minute ago, even a modest subsidy can ease a parenting student's financial instability and increase their chances of staying enrolled and completing. These kinds of state investments in direct subsidies can keep educational opportunity within reach for this population. And these students still end up graduating with a credential at lower rates than their peers without children. Because education is one of the strongest drivers for economic mobility and equity, it's essential to ensuring that all communities share in the higher employment and income associated with higher education. If the capacity of Washington's childcare industry improves, so too does the potential for parenting students to earn a credential and experience economic opportunity. By collaborating together with the state and institutions to support these students, generations of learners, families, and communities may benefit. Thanks so much for being here. We have a QR code on the screen as well for your convenience to link you to the brief that Casey and I wrote. I'll hand it back to you, Amy. Ooh, the QR code. Thank you, Amy. I will add the link to the chat.
Aria, thank you so much for sharing some of the core information and strategies from the brief, which will be linked in the chat. Like to invite folks, if you would have questions, to share in the chat, and Aria and Casey from Wasatch Research be happy to respond. I just want to note that there's been some discussion in the chat about evening hours for campus childcare and how common that is. Ann Slaughter, who is president of the Washington Campus Children's Centers Coalition, has offered some thoughts on that. This is an kind of a challenge area. And I see also Brandon from Bellevue College has noted that that has been a challenge there as well. So thanks so much for those comments in the chat. Anyone else who has a question in the chat that they would like to ask for Aria and Casey? Oh, we have a couple questions that have come through. So Karina asks, is there anything in the brief or research about teen parents or former teen parents?
Thanks for your question, Karina. There is not. Right now, we don't, with just the survey, we weren't able to um, slice it that way. But that would be something really interesting to look for in the future.
A great arrow to some opportunities for future research. Um,
Absolutely.
I see another question from Chelsea about campuses that might have early childhood ed programs that partner with their childcare centers. And I see Dr. Matt Campbell from Pierce said that that's part of what he can share in his part of the panel, which is up next. And Amy Ellen Duke Benfield, thanks so much for your comment about C Campus. There's an order to reopen the competition, so there's some good news on that. Thanks for the link as well. Okay, I'm just looking to see if there are any other comments. Also, thanks Teresa Anderson for your comment as well on the federal front. We are all looking for good news on that front. Um, let's see. Anything else that I may have missed? Oh my goodness. Tanya, thanks so much for the Everett Community College Belonging Center picture. That's great. Okay, I think we're going to move on to our panel. Note that there'll be more opportunities to engage with questions. So thanks everyone for that. We are thrilled to have a fantastic panel today that will bring their unique perspectives and work to the question of how Washington can better understand and advance parenting student success. I'll introduce the panel and then they'll each have an opportunity to share. We'll have a final question then that any of the panelists can respond to. If you have a question for our panelists, keep adding it to the chat and we'll save a few minutes at the end depending on time, and we can always follow up afterward if we do run out of time. So let me introduce our incredible panel. We have with us today Reina Gomez, who is a parent and a student at Everett Community College. She's also a student leader with Communities of Our Colleges organization. We have Dr. Matthew Campbell, who's president of Pierce College, Fort Steilacoom. We have Casey Lalonde, who is the director of the Children's Center at the Evergreen State College, and she's also part of the executive team together with Ann Slaughter of Pierce at the Washington Campus Children's Center Coalition. Next, we have Dr. Kate Westaby. Kate is a senior research associate with the Urban Institute, which has led a research to action campaign focused on parenting student success. And we're also pleased to welcome Ana Diaz, who is a parent and a student at Yakima Valley College, as well as a student leader with the Communities for Our Colleges organization. So I am going to stop sharing slides and allow us to hear from our first uh, panelist, who is Reina. Um, we'll start with you, Reina. So thanks so much for being with us today. It's really important for all of us to be able to hear the experiences of parenting students in Washington and really seek to better understand and support success. So tell us a little bit from your perspective about your experience as a parent who's also a college student. We'd love to be able to hear what motivates you to pursue post-secondary, why it's important for you and your family, and what have you found challenging, and what support helps?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon, everybody. As Amy said, my name is Reina. I am a parent and a now a student. Two things that I didn't think I would say in the same sentence, actually. Um, Thinking about the questions that have been presented to me, um, I was able to reflect this week. Um, being a student and a parent is very challenging. Um, I Everything I do, just being a parent, it's not just about me anymore, or even me first, as I like to put it. It's my daughter first. Everything I do, my life revolves around her first, and then me. So taking this step. To going back to school, to pursuing my dreams and my careers once more, was difficult. It was not an easy choice. Um, but when I was given this opportunity to go back, I took it. I didn't second guess it. I didn't question it. I grabbed it, because that's not something that comes around uh, often. um, Even with the challenges that come with being a parent, a single parent at that as well. Um, these things aren't taken lightly. Um, and then, but I see my daughter. She's still little. She's a 3-year old. I see how she looks at me. She still has that sparkle in her eyes. She still has that spark for life. I'm still like the best thing ever. Like, I'm still super mom. So I don't want to lose that for her. I still want to be that person. So I'm doing everything I can to be that person, not just for her, but for myself. So when I was able to find these opportunities to go back to school, that that gave me that push forward. It's like, this is it. This is my way in. This is how I maintain that super mom like energy, not for my daughter, and this is how I regain it for myself. Because being a parent, like in my experience, it kind of dulls that energy for you. So any way that I can find to keep it to going, to reignite it, I take it. But it's not easy. It's not easy, because sacrifices have to be made somewhere, because it's a full plate, balancing daycare, balancing work schedules, balancing a household. um, Something has to give somewhere. So what do you give up? Where do you take like cut off in order to do the school, to do the homework, to sit and focus while still giving that attention to my daughter, while still being able to do the errands, to cook, and like there's a lot right involved. But school is like a special type of dedication. You have to go to class. It's hours out of your week, out of your day. And then you come home, you have homework. You have to sit down and do it. And with my 3 year old, she's very active. She's a spitfire. So she's up and down. Like I can't take my eyes off of her. So how do I sit down and focus on something when my eyes are in other places, when my head is in different places? Um, Thank you, Annie. Um, so it's just like this whole thing. Like, how do you do it? Um, so like it's pulling resources. It's pulling family members. If you have family members, you have to pull them in. If you're able to get that support, and also finding these resources. Where are they? Like, there's no centralized place where you can just go say, "Hey, I need this help," and it's handed to you. I had to find it. I had to go back and forth to campus. I had to go back and forth to offices, DSHS, talking to people, making phone calls, and figuring this out. Like it was almost a full time job as well. Like, and by the time I was able to get all of this put together, I was able to like kind of relax. I was like, okay, my basic needs are covered. I have my housing. I have my food. I have my basic needs. I have my daycare. Okay, so I can sit and focus now. I can do this. This is manageable. But to get to that point, it took a lot of work. So, but not everyone is able to do that. I understand that not every parent has that, and I've seen it. Like in my when I was growing up, I had two parents that worked full time. And one of them went to school. So I grew up in that environment, and it was hard. Being that child was hard. So it was like where was the attention? Where was the love? And it felt like there was a mismatch, right? But now as a parent, I understand it. So, but at the same time, I don't want to be repeating those things. So it's how do you do it, but don't do it the same way. So that is why I think that if we centralize all these resources, we put them in one place and we make it easy, like for a parent, because being a parent is already hard. So anything we can do to make it just that much easier and give parents that way to go forward, move up, and then give those children a way to move forward as well, because that's what this is all about. It's just moving everything forward and everything up. Um, it'll just it's just a way forward in general for everybody and just the future. So that's why this whole thing is just great. Just parent support, I'm all for it. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you guys.
Jade, Jada, so grateful to hear about your experience and your perspectives on this. And boy, I think as you're seeing all the love in the chat,
Thank you
you
guys.
are well appreciated. And I think that question of how we can all get together to
Mm,
simplify processes and build the
yeah,
support for parents
yeah.
and their families is just what this is all about. So thank you
Because it
so
takes a
much.
community. That's what how it
Yes,
goes, right? It takes the community. So let's bring that back, I say.
brilliant. I love that. Thank you, Reina.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to turn to Dr. Matt Campbell, president of Pierce College, Fort Steilacoom. Thanks so much for being with us today. I'm going to put a spotlight on you. Um,
You don't
and
need to.
if I can figure out the tech, I will absolutely do that. But thank you so much for being with us. Oh, there we go. We would really love to hear from you about Pierce College and its leadership, truly in Washington, around supporting parenting student success. Tell us some of the practices and the policies that Pierce has to support parenting students, and really why, as a president, you think that this is an important area of work for the college and for the community as well.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Honored to be here. And I would be remiss if I did not say that so much of what I'm going to talk about is owed to the leadership of Ann Slaughter, who's just an amazing champion for this work, an amazing champion at our college, for students, for children, you name it. So I'm going to start with the why first. And, at Pierce College, everything is about mission. We create quality educational opportunities for a diverse community of learners to thrive in an evolving world. And if we are not supporting student parents, we are not doing that work. We are not meeting our mission. We see this as an equity issue. And as your demographics shown, it's not simply a parenting student equity issue, it's also racial equity. It's so many intersection marginalizations that create a need for us to have a systemic approach and response so that we can both dismantle systems that are not working for student parents, that we can help students navigate the ones that we can't dismantle, and that we build new structures that are systemic so that we ultimately normalize the experience. I don't love the word normalize, but we normalize that experience so that it's not special. It's not something different. It's just how we function as an institution, and that supporting students is part of how we create inclusivity, part of how we create a welcoming environment. I have this amazing list of things, and I've written like a billion notes on it since we've started. A lot of it is stuff that folks are doing already, so I don't know that it's going to be like, oh, that's really innovative and different. But I want to talk about a couple of the nuances within those. So I'll kick it off with the child development centers. These have been at Fort Silicon and Puyallup, I'm going to say for decades, certainly for quite some time. We have dedicated facilities for those. We have a blended financing for that. I think that's a question as well. Like, you have to have institutional support because federal grants are iffy at best. State, again, fluctuates how much you get and when. So the institution, we probably spend about $1 million a year across the two centers, blended with those other funding pieces as well. So that sort of and along with fees and things like that that students pay. Those centers have study spaces. So when there is that idea of like, when I go home, like, how do I possibly navigate everything I have at home and children running around and homework, et cetera. So building those as inclusive spaces as well, not just for the children. It's not just a drop off. We'll take care of your children. And then when you come pick them up, you're on your own. We see those as really engagement centers where parents come in, they're involved with the teachers, they're involved with the children, and they have spaces that are carved out for them to focus and do homework, to have computers and things like that on site, so that they're never really feeling separated from that space if they don't want to be. Um, one of the questions came up about evening and even drop-in care. Our historic approach has been one of child development. And so we do all day care and half day care. Those are funded in part through Head Start and Early Head Start. So that's the some of the features that go into that, like on-site family advocates. But working with our ECE program, historically, things like drop-in was like, how do we really do child development if it's drop off for a couple hours, like, and kids are in and out, and how do they build relationships and how do they build socialization? So I think we've been working to figure that out. And then we have a lab school as a part of our ECE program, and we're looking at moving that to under the operations of our CDCs, our child development centers. So that will give us a lot more opportunity for things like drop-in, like evening care, and shorter term care. Our main facilities are licensed, but our ECE lab school has not been. So they function under sort of different rules and such as well. To expand beyond the child development centers, one of the things we did a couple years ago is we we reframed some of our staffing to not just be a director of the CDCs, but to actually build family advocacy into that role. That role now has a responsibility for data. Like data is so vital, and we are still sort of piecemealing it together, taking it. It's I would not say we are as mature in our data collection for student parents or parenting students as we are in many of the other areas of the institution. Some of that has to do with systems. Some of that has to do with just how and the willingness to be able to collect and share those data back out. But the role of director of the Child Development Centers and Family Advocacy now has a role to help facilitate more of that process, to gather those data, to help in the analysis of those data, which then helps us create better processes overall. Um, a lot of our work across the campus more recently has been around culture. And my role in that has really just been to say yes, or to figure out how to say yes. If something's like, oh, I don't know how we get to that. But rarely, I think, do we say absolutely not. That's off the table. It's more of a how do we get there, and then figuring out sustainability. And I think sustainability comes from getting those practices into policy, which then cycles back around to culture. So things for culture, a lot of our this started as grassroots stuff. Our libraries have child-friendly areas, and that was like the librarians bringing in furniture from home, bringing in toys from home. The same thing in our tutoring center. So there's a separate area within the tutoring center where children can be engaged and while someone is receiving tutoring and in that particular facility. Those are still a little slapdash, but we're working toward formalizing that. How do we then build structure around that? Things like a children on campus policy, might not be in everyone's radar. When I first got here, our policy was absolutely not. Like the risk involved, the liability involved, just no children on campus. This is not a place for children. We have since shifted that to one that I would say is permissive, but maybe not as welcoming as we want it to be. So it's constantly evolving, and I think having folks who are advocating in the space when we look at policy and saying who's not served by this policy and what impact does this have on student success, and therefore what impact does that have on families in our community who we're supposed to be serving. So we've continued to evolve that policy, and we're looking at it again to see how do we make it more welcoming. Sure, there's going to be places we don't want children, like a chemistry lab, perhaps. But how do we navigate that when someone does have a chemistry lab? What's our process there? If I spotlighted just a couple other things, culture, even just looking at our all district day, it's one of those every employee has to be here kind of days. We've now built a separate parenting room so you can bring your kids to all district day and you can engage in that space where your kids can go wild and they're also not necessarily impacting the learning and experiences of others. So, but then those children are invited to go throughout with their parent throughout the day for the rest of the day as well. And we've changed. We used to start like promptly at 8 a.m. and everyone had to be there at 8 a.m. And some people don't always have to be at work 8 a.m. and they have drop off, they have pickup. So we've adapted our schedule to be more flexible in the morning, more flexible in the afternoon to account for things that parenting students especially need support in navigating. If I had to pick one last thing, I might say, I mean, training is huge. Um, we have a Canvas support shell for parenting students. That was the project of a faculty member in it wasn't a sabbatical, but it was a sabbatical-esque research project that they did and actually built this, started as a Canvas shell, but really an opportunity for parenting students to connect and identify the challenges they were facing, find support with one another, find support with faculty, find support with student services, which then informs how do we respond, how do we build up more support for parenting students, and how do we just, again, normalize that into our inclusive pedagogy practice, our inclusive practices, so that, again, we are building structures and systems that don't need to be adapted. They're adapted from the ground up. So that was a lot, rambly at best. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was just so enlightening on the different policies and practices and just the kind of the holistic approach and iterative approach that Team Pierce has been engaging in. Very powerful. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next panelist and hear from Casey Lalonde, Director of the Evergreen State College's Children's Center. And Casey, like at Pierce, the Evergreen State College has had a high proportion of enrolled parenting students and children of students at your center. Tell us a little bit about the issues parenting students face and how Evergreen supports parenting students and their children.
Sure. It's an honor to be here and to be part of this work. And I think what I wanted to say will reiterate what you've heard from others, but I just want to lay it out really, really clearly. The national research shows that on average, parenting students have a higher GPA than non-parenting students. But parenting students, when they do not have access to high quality, on-site affordable childcare, have one of the worst retention rates of any group of students. And of course, as has been said already, if any aspect of their identity has been historically marginalized, then that lack of retention is compounded. So it isn't how they're doing in school. They have a higher than average GPA with a lower than average retention rate. But when parents have access to high quality, on-site, affordable childcare, they have one of the best retention rates. So over and over again, we're seeing that. And then just to kind of break it down a little bit further, high quality because they're going to put their children's immediate needs first. And then as far as on-site, it's because more than non-parenting students, parenting students are time poor. They do not have time to go all over town, dropping their child off at one place and then going to school some other place. So when it's on site, they have a much, much higher retention rate. And finally, it needs to be affordable because they are financially poorer than other students. So those are really the three things that I think that the national research indicates helps that retention rate. And I would say that I saw some notes in the chat about the C Campus grant. Right now, the Evergreen State College, we prioritize students on our waiting list, and thanks to the C Campus grant, we're able to offer free childcare to all of our Pell eligible and low income grad students. If they can get into the center, because we do have pretty healthy waiting lists, but if they can get in, they will have free childcare. And as a result, I believe in my last interim report to the federal government, the retention rate was 100%. 100% of the low income parenting students who had access to on-site high quality childcare were able to either graduate or continue on with their studies, which is I think absolutely worth noting. And so I think that that's something that that Evergreen has really done that I think is really helpful is because we do have it here. The Children's Center at Evergreen has been here since 1987. And we are currently nationally certified, which is also required for that C Campus grant.
Casey,
Thank you.
what a powerful story. I just am so thrilled about that rate of retention and kind of your
Yeah,
broader view on that.
yeah,
Due to time, I think we're going to move on.
sure.
Thank you so much. We're going to next invite Kate Westaby of the Urban Institute. Would love to hear how you've worked with colleges and states on policies and practices to support parenting students. And tell us a little bit more about why data collection is an important part of that and some examples you might want to share.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'm happy to be here with you all. I was a student parent through 3 degrees, and so a lot of what Raina talked about really resonated with me. I had my oldest son when I was 17, and so I went straight into undergrad trying to navigate public benefits and constantly trying to secure those family members that Raina talked about. And so that lived experience really guides my research and other efforts to support student parents. One way that we do that is through Urban Institute's Data to Action campaign for parenting students. I know that Abby previously put the link in chat, but we have an upcoming Parenting Student Success Learning series with you all. So there are 3 more webinars. If you join them, you can hear about the coaching that we've done. So we have coached, we're on our second cohort of 23 colleges, and I've coached 6 of those colleges to learn about, how they can better implement data collection about student parents on their campuses. And so without that, the data collection pieces, student parents really continue to remain invisible. Since I'd mentioned I was a teen parent, and so when I started my bachelor's degree, I made one friend in college because I didn't live in dorms. I was constantly running back to my son to care for him right after class because I felt like it was my responsibility. And then, it wasn't cool to admit you were a parent, and I didn't feel like I belonged on campus. And so the data can be really powerful in making parents' experiences visible. Quantitative numbers, data, they're important. They can help really disaggregate that hidden information about being less likely to complete in a timely manner, where students are. So one example of college who I worked with is California State University Channel Islands. I'll drop a link in chat, but they have done really great things with the data collection that they implemented. Here is the link, but they were able to increase their documentation of student parents by 61%. So a lot able to document student parents, which is now integrated in their campus dashboards. So it's something that staff can and institutional research can look at. They also did something really cool where they were able to identify student parents and the student service resources they used. Aria said when she was talking about the data earlier that student parents have a lot of basic needs resources that they need. And so the CSU Channel Islands was thinking, okay, that means the student parents would be more likely to use our basic needs resources, right? They actually found that wasn't the case. And so that data collection actually helped them try to figure out how they were going to address gaps in those students. Being a part, understanding how they could better access those basic needs resources. I want to just encourage you all to do a couple things, and that is to engage 2 key demographics, college leadership in this work with data collection. We had some colleges like Cal Poly SLO use the president letter we required as part of the data action campaign to say, like, our president's invested, registrar, please create these data changes. And then student parents, like people like Raina, their experiences make the data relevant. And so really engaging student parents across this initiative and this work is going to be really helpful and useful.
Hey, thank you so much for kind of the personal side of this and your guidance from the great work of the Urban Institute. And we'll be eager to connect with you in our coming learning series. I'd like to introduce our final panelist, Ana Diaz. She is a student at Yakima Valley College and a leader with the Communities for Our Colleges. Ana, tell us a little bit about your experience and also about the bill that Communities for Our Colleges is advocating for in this legislative session. We have maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ana Diaz, and I am a student at the Yakima Valley College. I am also a parent who waited 8 years after high school to attend college because I could not afford childcare for my children, which made pursuing higher education impossible at that time. This journey takes twice or 3 times the effort, and I keep going to show my daughter and my son what perseverance looks like. Some days the hardest part of being it's not being fully present with my children because I'm studying or doing homework. That sacrifice is painful, but I believe one day it will be worth it. I am doing this for my children so they can see that even when something is hard, it is possible to keep going and build a better future. So my goal is to become a teacher to encourage children to stay in school and believe in themselves. I am especially passionate about supporting students from different backgrounds, including those in low-income communities, who may not always be given the space or support to dream big. Like many students' parents, I am balancing school, childcare, work, and basic needs all at once. I'm here today with Communities for Our Colleges to talk about the Senate Bill 6227 and why this matters so deeply to students like me across Washington. Right now, Washington does not have a clear way to identify parenting students. SB 6227 helps address this gap. SB 6227 encourages colleges and universities to collect consistent statewide data on parenting students and report that information each year. It also creates a parenting student success work group made up for students, parents, colleges, universities, state agency, and community partners. This work group will develop recommendations on how to collect parent-student data and the best practices to support parenting students, including childcare, priority registration, and partnerships with community organizations. Right now, SB 6227 is in Senate rules. We are advocating for this bill to continue moving forward to a Senate floor vote in the House. This bill is a smart, cost-effective way to better support students, partners, parents, and use existing resources more effectively. I am asking to be seen and counted so students like me can be succeed in college and give back to our communities. SB 6227 is an important step in making that possible. Thank you.
Anna, thank you so much for sharing your experience and also your advocacy work. I think you're seeing here a lot of powerful kind of support for that. Um, well, folks, we are closing on our incredible opportunity today to learn from our panel. I'd like to share two things to close. One is information about our spring virtual learning series. This is an opportunity for you to answer that question, how can I learn more and how can I get more involved in Washington strategy? So the dates and topics are here. These were chosen by a series of a kind of strategy session that we had in October among many, many partners. And we invite you all to check it out. In the chat is information about it and the Zoom registration links. Also, I would just like to say thank you to all of you for joining us today, student leaders, advocates, policymakers, higher education, early learning, community-based orgs, agencies, all of you who made today a great discussion. Thank you to our presenters, Arya Kukreja and Casey Dane, and to our incredible panelists, Reina, Anna, Matt, Casey, and Kate. Big thank you also to the planning collaborators that are on this slide, really working together for today's overview, the coming virtual learning series, and as an ongoing core team. If you'd like to engage and collaborate on next steps, please reach out. I'm going to put my information in the chat and you have it on this slide as well. And we hope to hear from you. Thank you all so much for all of your engagement today. And we hope to hear from you and engage with you on the work of advancing parenting student success in Washington. Thank you all and have a great Friday. Okay.